Hey y'all, welcome to the Standing on Business podcast, where ambition meets action. From career moves to life lessons,
our podcast is dedicated to supporting you as you navigate both the personal and professional growth journey.
Ultimately giving you the confidence to always stand in your truth. Hi everybody, welcome back to the Standing on Business podcast.
Welcome back.
This is your girl Amari.
This is Bianca.
And today we want to talk about the science of success. Essentially, we feel like, when we talk about standing on business, people take that so many different ways because it's such a colloquial term in our community of what does that mean? Like I'm standing on business. I'm not texting this person back, or like I'm standing on business. Like I'm pulling up, and it's like, okay, but what does that actually mean? Especially in terms of being successful, which we can talk about later in the episode. But everyone has a varying definition of what that even is. But I do think that there is something formulaic to success. And there's something about, people who are willing to go that extra mile and practice grit and, are dedicated and are willing to endure long suffering.
Right. And then who we even view as successful in current times.
And so definitely wanted to break that down a little bit just because success is something that I think many people are striving for. But the path to achieving it is often elusive. And so I think that's where the science piece comes in, is understanding what are the common ground foundational principles, behaviors, and mindsets that lead to real lasting achievements, like things that are tangible, not just oh, I'm on because I said I'm on, or I'm Timothy. What does that actually mean?
Or I'm showing out on social media and it looks like,
not the flex for
it looks like I'm successful, but sometimes we know the people in the background that we know you in real life.
No, we know you in real life. Yes. So saying all that to say, we just thought it would be important to talk about studying the science behind success and how it helps us to identify what truly drives progress and growth versus relying on any myths or outdated ideas. And I think just to start, I think it's important to understand that success is shaped by a myriad of different influences, from cultural norms to societal expectations, to the experience and achievements of people that we admire or people that came before us. So whether that's, a celebrity or someone in your family who's oh, everyone in my family is a doctor or a lawyer in the military or does whatever. It's that helps to shape how we set goals and make decisions, and ultimately how we define success. Because some people, especially,
didn't grow up with it.
Yeah. And not even that. I think what we're seeing a lot in current trends is shifting back to a more conservative mindset 100%. In a lot of ways.
Yes, I agree.
Even the whole trad wife,
oh god, with what's her name? Nora.
Yes,
Smith?
Nara Smith.
I think
I love me some Nara Smith, so I'm not gonna do too much.
I think I only watched one or two videos, but I saw the controversy on on TikTok. So.
I wouldn't say I'm a stan, but I'm definitely a fan. I'm not too invested, so I can't say oh, I actually admire this person. But success to her is being able to make meals and drinks and pudding and arts and crafts all from scratch in her kitchen. Yes, but someone else may feel I want to be a CEO, or I want to be, and I don't want to work for anybody but myself, So I think just understanding how the things that have impacted us shape our goals and make this how we make decisions and ultimately define what success looks like. Is important. It's one layer to it, but also it's important to just dive into the science of success, which we can unravel in talking about habits and strategies, which we'll talk about that a little later in the segment, that are actually proven to be successful and beneficial in that workout, based on what we've applied in our own lives to reach our own unique goals, but also, the funds of knowledge that has been imparted and bestowed upon us. So
yes, we want to help y'all feel like what you're doing is still successful, and then how you get to where you actually are saying, hey, I'm a successful person.
Yeah.
So we don't want to, say, oh, you're not successful because you're not at this level. Because every part of the journey, which we'll talk about, is important to you getting to that where you feel like, I don't want to say the term of oh, I feel like I made it, because that kind of goes into some of the, the culture of, the hustle culture or whatever you want to call it. But it kind of makes people feel like where they are right now isn't success. Yeah. So
I also think like that mindset promotes like a crabs in a bucket mentality because you feel like, oh, like not everybody's gonna make it. And I mean, everybody can't go, but
I would say we
but
sometimes say everybody
but you
can't
can't,
go.
that's not necessarily determined by you clawing other people down. I think that that is manifested in what are you doing to build yourself up?
Correct.
And what are you doing as it like to try to do that peer level and like lifting as you climb, but also like reaching back for hands of like people that are coming up behind you and still also connecting to the people who came before you.
Yeah, and a personal and your personal life and the business life too, or
Yeah.
business or career, however you want to say it. It's like what are the habits, which we'll touch on, that help
Ooh,
you
because it blends.
have it. Yeah, I know.
You got to find a balance because it really is no difference. And like, because how you show up
I
is based
know.
on who you are and that's based on care. That's a whole lot of stuff.
Okay,
But
let's
I think
get
it's a good segue into a question I wanted to ask you,
yeah.
which is like, how do you personally define success? I feel like I'm still searching. So, I don't know.
I would say for me, which we talked about this, it's all about purpose, and I've grown, or I guess like evolved to that thought process over the past like 2 years of success to me is blanketed, like foundationally, I am living and working in my purpose. And so that is how I define success. And I feel like I am, I'm doing my walk right now. I
Mhm.
am doing things that I did not think I would ever be doing because I know it's a part of my purpose and know it's stuff that I'm called to do. Now, when I say, I feel like there's many layers to that because, like, is there like a dollar amount I want to get to in life, to feel comfortable in that financial sense? Yes,
Yeah.
like financial success. So I feel like there's different layers, but foundationally for me, it's the purpose. And then I feel like I'm still defining like, financial success or maybe it's even like personal life success. So for me, it's like the purpose. And then now it's like, okay, what are the other things that build around it? So really been focusing on building habits, good habits this year and last year, and then really trying to see like how is that impacting like what I do. So like you said, like it kind
Mhm.
of intertwines personal and business and everything kind of comes together. So it's just like what habits do I need to do in my everyday routine, whether it's personal stuff, whether it's even simply I'm going to block out time to check emails every day at a certain time just cuz that is a habit of me always following up with people. So that is what I'm kind of growing in that aspect and kind of like trying to see what other things like lead me to that success. So that's what I would say is, that was a long answer to
No, it was a good
to
answer.
your
And I
question.
think like it serves as like something or an example that other people can kind of lean into. Cause for me, I'm still trying to figure out what that looks like. I think I didn't recently, but I'm coming up on a milestone birthday this year. And so I've been thinking through like I don't know, it's been a deep time of introspection and reflection for me, and so I'm thinking through, like, everything that I thought about success is kind of turned on its head at this point. Like, I thought, like, "Oh, when you reach this age, like, you have this accomplished, and you're a true adult, and you."
25 and married.
Yeah, literally, and as I'm living life just as it is and, going with the flow of what's being thrown at me, and not just in the sense of like, "Oh my god, life is just throwing things at me," but, like, as I also ascend and evolve and become a more enlightened version of myself, um, what I think is success is changing. And so I think that that kind of I can't necessarily say what success looks like to me because it's something that it looks different every day, but I do think what I have been able to gain from that experience or gain from the current experience that I'm going through now is the difference or the differential between a growth and a fixed mindset. So, like, I think when you have a very fixed mindset, like sometimes you kind of shoot yourself in the foot because you're limiting yourself in being fixed in this one position of like, I grew up in the band and my parents told me to play the saxophone.
Yes,
Like
yes.
you become this stigma or a typecast or a stereotype of
Mhm.
even yourself. And we're not monolithic. Like
Right.
who you are is not just one thing. It's very multifaceted and multidimensional. And I think when you're in a fixed mindset, you can like stagnate yourself because you become used to seeing yourself in a certain light. And that is different than, I think, tenacity and
Mhm.
staying steadfast in who you know you are and being like, "I'm not gonna deviate from my core of who I am, my foundation." Um, it's different. It's more so of like, "Oh, like, I don't really wanna venture out into this," and I'm a victim to it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm guilty of this myself of like, "Nope, I'm a corporate girly, I'm a school girly, like, I don't do the entrepreneur, I don't do
And
the
I'm on the
event.
other side. I'm like, don't put me in a
I'm
box.
outside."
Like, to your point, like, I have to just like transition. I would say like 3, 4 years ago, you couldn't tell me that I do anything in like social media or like media space, marketing, creative. Like, I was like, same thing of like, oh, I'm in healthcare. I did transition from clinical to business. So it's like, okay, that was already kind of out the box because a lot of people don't do that, I guess so early in their career. But redefining what success looks like, I would say over the past 2 years, I definitely, like I said, evolved to more, hey, it's about my purpose, not
Yeah,
a title or, I guess just this is where I need to be at a certain point.
yeah. And I think even just being willing to have that growth mindset, it puts you in positions to where you will think about things differently, and, like, you don't even know certain things exist until you run into the opportunity, and you're like, "Oh, I never even
Right.
knew this was a thing." Like, "Oh, I can be, like, a light engineer?" Like, I didn't even know that that existed until I met this person in, whatever city or in a cat or whatever the case may be, and so, yeah, I definitely think that for me, it's something that is ever changing, and, like, to your point, we definitely have had the privilege of having certain experiences on the front end of our career. Like we say all the time, like, this isn't normal. Like we
I
have the
know.
jobs of like people's parents because we kind of just plowed through um our development stages. But I also think that that is such like a blessing in a lot of ways because we've been able to connect with people older than us who were able to say like, "Hey, if I would have had the opportunity to do this at this point in time, I would have taken it." Or, "Hey, no, that's a really good look for you. Like you should probably lean into that. Let me connect you with this person." And
Right.
so,
We've had a lot of people pour into us, which is good.
yeah,
It's a
which is
blessing.
it is and I feel like that's a big part of why we even wanted to start this podcast because I think a lot of times when you receive favor, it's kind of like you have like a survivor's remorse kind of complex. Well, at least I know I do sometimes of like, dang, I wish that everybody could have a slice of this pie. Like, I wish
No,
that,
that's true.
like, it's like the mean girl scene of like, let's break this crown and throw it out into the crowd and everybody get a piece. And it's just
Yes.
like, I feel like this is our effort to be able to do that. But I think realistically, like, that's not always the case. And so if you're too afraid to venture out or seek those resources, like they're not necessarily always going to come knock on your door and finding you in your regular day-to-day routine. Like you're going to have to step outside of that and
Yeah.
like face your fear of being seen or your fear of trying. And I say this to myself as well, but you have to face your
Yeah.
fears of really putting yourself out there to anything because that is how you end up with everything.
I was like, I love a good, I like shooting my shot and like the,
Yeah.
the business sense.
But but you've done that, and I've seen you do that, and I've seen you, like, rock that like, it's like, "How do we end up here?" Like,
All the
literally,
time.
I
I just have the mindset of like it's gonna happen. So what we're talking about, we could, LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn a lot to just really connect with people, and honestly, everybody needs to just get their profile together, but also use it as a tool to connect with people like any organization, CEO, VP, whoever you need to connect with. LinkedIn is your way to get to them. Their emails are flooded. I promise you.
Yeah.
Their Instagrams, that's a little bit, it's not the most
Too
professional.
personal, yeah.
Unless you had to. I got a story about me shooting my shot, business shot in the
Personally,
DMs, and it worked. It
yeah,
worked.
yeah, it
It
did.
worked. We're gonna talk about that in a later episode, but definitely utilize the tools that you do have to, connect with people, and just don't be afraid to reach out because, like we said, a lot of people love to pour into others, especially if they're, we consider them quote unquote successful.
Yeah.
They want to give back to people, so utilize that LinkedIn, y'all.
No, I love that you say that because I also think that that's, like, a little gem to give,
Yeah.
but also it, like, goes into, like, things that you do that are habits or routines for
Right.
yourself. Like, it's a part of the science, right, of being
Yeah.
successful. It is a part of like, hey, there is a formulaic aspect to this of if I do X, Y, and Z, it'll give me, Roman numeral A result. And so I think in that, um, what are some things, I guess, for you, Bianca? Because again, I'm in a very transitional phase in life right now. And we'll get to like the things that I do because I definitely think,
Yeah.
as much as I'm saying, like, oh my gosh, I'm all over the place, I am pump faking y'all because I am also someone who is very type A and meticulous and
Very.
like organized and detail oriented. And so for me, I feel like I don't have it all together right now just because I'm having to relinquish control of being that fixed person. Like I'm going through that process and journey of being more nimble and flexible and agile. But I think you do that very well while still maintaining components of stability. And so I want to ask you, Bianca, like, what are some things that you do that are like habitual or routine, that like assist in your time management, or that you think have that you think has definitely been a key factor in helping you maintain sustainable success in certain areas professionally?
I would say if we're talking about first is the consistency,
Mhm.
and then touch on time management. And I would say that is where I feel like it's like my little sweet spot of like I'm very good at time management, especially when it comes to like juggling, different businesses at this point. But
Oh yeah,
before
come on, big
but
TV,
before it was
yeah.
different projects. So like just learning those habits early on from even when you're in school, having like, I was in nursing school, like
Yeah.
that was no joke. Like, so, but learning those habits of time management. And then as I'm, taking more and more and now expanding to like different businesses, it's like I have that skill set to be able to like change my mind or not change my mindset, but like switch my brain really. Cause like
Mhm.
I was, I go from, doing the healthcare work to kind of doing more so like doing content. Then it's like back to kind of managing people now,
Yeah, oh
like
gosh.
in a business. So it's just like having the ability to like really just be focused on what I'm doing in that moment and then be like, okay, this is done. Let me switch to the next thing. Has if the flexibility in that and me like kind of training that skill
Mhm.
is what helps me weekly. I would say that is like my first thing that has like helped me with success because a lot of people, what happens is they kind of be like, okay, well, I'm gonna focus on this and I'm gonna hyper focus. And then like when I don't hyper focus to the point where it's detrimental to the other things I have going on. And I see that a lot with people.
Yeah.
So,
I
I'll
feel
stop
like
right there.
no, because that's a perfect place for me to pick up because I think I'm what you're describing, but I don't think that because I'm very like critical, like me being that type A, like a little bit more rigid person, I'm not missing a deadline. So even if it's like I have to put all these things on my back and like
Right.
burn out, I'm gonna get it done. But that's not the healthiest way to do things. And I think to your point with talking about consistency and habits, I think what works for me is having those things that are tangible or that I can like having like a resource that I can look back to that's black and white and very plain, but is a system. And I think that is something that I pride myself on is having really good like systems and processes because for me, it's like I create a to-do list every day. Like I
That's
need to
good.
know what I'm doing every day. And it's not that I'm gonna finish everything all the
Mhm.
time. I am human and I do extend time for grace, but before I start my to-do list for what's today? It's a Thursday? Or yes, Thursday. Before I start my to-do list for Friday, I'm looking back at what didn't get it finished on Thursday, bumping that to the top of my list, and then I'm prioritizing my priorities, which is another like gem that I would throw out there is like sometimes everything is gonna feel red. Like everything's gonna feel red. You're not gonna feel like you're giving your best to the professional piece of the pie or the entrepreneur thing of like, oh, I really have this really great idea that I want to do, but like, it's hard being an adult. It's hard of like, I woke up, I went to the gym, I ate right, I went to work, I came back. I just don't feel like doing that. But
They gotta do it all over again.
and then you got to do it all over again. But essentially, it's kind of like when you see that written out, and it's like I've trained my mind to think like until certain things are done on this list, and I've prioritized my priorities to know what those things are. I'm not done for the day. Like I can't
Right.
clock out yet. Like I don't clock out necessarily at 4 or 5 or 6. It's like okay, well I still need to do this thing that is for my business or for my you know
Mhm.
entrepreneurial projects growth. Um, and so I definitely think like working in the lines of like something that I can see, because also it's rewarding, it's fulfilling when you can look
Yeah.
back on a week's worth or a month's worth of
And check it
notes.
off.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
especially too like I know that I get anxiety about things being due, but it's like if I see that date and I know that it's coming, ooh, and I'm also like a big procrastinator. So it's like, okay, it's rewarding for me when I can look back on something that gave me a lot of like angst or like I didn't know how I was going to get this
Mhm.
done. It's almost like a testimonial where it's like, oh, that was that thing from March. Like, girl, you scratched that off the list. Like, that was so much easier when you actually sat down and made it a priority as
Right.
opposed to like everything is important. And so yeah, I think for me it's one, like, and you taught me this, like, from, like, a terminology standpoint, I feel like I was just freelance doing it, but creating, like, a social calendar of, like,
Yes, I
okay.
was about to get into the calendars because I was like, how
Yes.
you are with to-do lists, I'm like that with my calendar.
Mhm.
So it's like when I was saying like, oh, I'm very much like time management, I am putting on there follow up, like finish your emails. Like
Yeah.
I'm putting on there
You have
like
to.
break time. I'm putting on there, oh, like I like for real, like for a month's worth, I may be like, okay, I'm going to do one networking event. I'm going to do so like I really do put everything on my calendar to where even if it's like personal, professional, a stretch, I'm trying to like meet somebody,
Mhm.
trying to like, go to a
Not a
new
walk in the park.
yeah, like I look, go walk in the park, go golfing. I've
Yeah.
learned golfing like
Yeah.
recently. So it's just like I'm gonna put those things on my calendar and like I guess it's more of a visual
Yeah.
and then like the to-do list, but it's like, okay, cool. I have this day, or I'm focusing on this business this day and this one this day. So it's like that's how I'm able to like visually kind of just carve out and like guess that's my visual to-do list. But I
Mhm.
don't really do like a like really like
Like a check mark list.
like a bulleted list. I don't.
I feel like I merged the 2 tools together. Like,
Okay.
I use my calendar to dictate what I'm gonna prioritize that day and what needs to get done. And so, for me, that's how I kinda find the balance of, like, I can kinda sacrifice my, business thing right now because this personal thing is on fire. Like, I've been a horrible niece. Like, I need to call so and so
Yes.
and check in and like be like, "Hey, like I know that you had surgery or that it was your birthday. Like, how did that go?" And then vice versa of like I'm too much into like leaning into the more lax side of my life or the more creative side of like, oh, like, I'm getting lost in coming up with all these concepts for this project or going to events. It's like, okay, like no, you actually have this objective and this deliverable for your 9 to 5 job. So you need to find the time, even if it's,
I know.
on a Sunday, like, treat it like school of like, okay, no, I'm not going to
I
this
know.
thing or I'm not going to watch Housewives tonight. I can catch it on Monday, like so that I'm prepped and primed for the next day or whatever is to come next. But I definitely think doing really anything, like whether you take the things that work for Bianca and I, or you build on that by finding new things that work for you, I think the power of consistency is ultimately like that X value that you're constantly trying to solve for that is like the key piece to success. Like you can't do anything without being
Mhm.
consistent because essentially what you're doing is you're making those deposits of like I was consistent in this way and then I continue to build on that and then it goes back to what I was saying about like the journal and to-do list. Like you look back and you're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
like this isn't something that I'm just saying is in my mind or I'm not just yapping, of like, oh, I think I want to do this or I want to try that." Like you've turned those thoughts and those desires
Yeah.
into,
Tangible
yeah,
like
like
objects. Yeah.
you've grown. And so I think another thing for me is I try to plot that. So the way that I kind of like trifecta everything is putting that on like a 30, 60, 90-day plan of like,
I was just about to ask you use any tools.
I was
I was
gonna
like,
say,
we could
so
get
for
to that
me,
next.
I definitely use like I would guess it's like what is it, an objective and results, like key results, like tracker. Like I look at
Yeah.
it from like,
Like a project tracker like we used to do.
yeah, yes. And I do, oh my gosh, me now being in project management has helped me in so many different facets personally, but I definitely look at like taking tempered approaches of like, okay, because I'm a person like I'm not gonna just talk about something. If I say I'm gonna do something, I might give myself some
Some
time to
grace.
talk about it. Yeah, I might, I may not do it right then and there, but I'm gonna do the things that I said that I want to do. And I think that that goes back to character. Like, who are you who you say you are? Like, it's not just the success of like, I'm this person because I feel like this or I want to put on this air. No, when you really can claim who you are, that comes with things to back that up. Like, if I'm saying I'm a doctor, I have an MD degree. If I'm
Yeah.
saying I am a judge, I went to law school. Like, I'm not a fraud. And so I feel like in that capacity, like, it's just, I forgot what I was about to say. It's just important, I
Yeah.
think, to be consistent and have a certain level of character that you commit to the devotion to yourself to knock out those goals in a way that is like rhythmic or consistent. And I think when you stamp that and you put a time
Those
frame on it,
milestones, like, you're like, "I gotta get
yeah.
to month 3, quarter 2, whatever,
Mhm.
and I'm achieving XYZ," and I do that. I feel like I do a bigger, I feel like, strategic plan, as we
Mm.
talk about our career, it's like strategy is my background, and so, just like you said with project management, using those strategic tools of like, "Okay, Imma do a nice strategic plan for the year." I do that with I'm crazy. I've been doing like a goal list and stuff since like I remember my 8th grade one when going into high school. I was
Yeah.
crazy. I don't know
I
what was
don't think
wrong
it's
with
crazy. I think it goes back to like the science. I think people who tap into that, the earlier the better. Like
Yeah.
people who find that wave of like, no, I need to be writing these things out and bringing them to fruition. And I feel like the word manifest is so like
It's overused. It is
yeah,
to
but
me.
like essentially that's what you're doing is like you're turning your nothing into something that's something. Like you're bringing it from one dimension into the other where people can see it, feel it, touch it, experience it. And so I don't think that you're crazy at all. It may be like that's the opportunity is to
Yeah.
change the way that people view that kind of stuff or where you place value because to your point, it's like, "Oh, no, I was crazy," or, "Oh, like, I don't even know why I was doing that," but you're diminishing that that was a building block for you, and
Yeah.
had you not been that
It
crazy
grew
girl
it
in
grew
8th
every
grade.
year. Look, I put on
Yeah,
the list. I was like, "Yeah, I wanna be student of the year, be cheerleading captain." That was like my goals, y'all,
I love
for
it,
high school, and I did accomplish them.
period.
So so they were accomplished, but I would say just some of the other I know we're talking about tools and just, as far as, like, making sure we are staying in that power of consistency. I would say, AI. Thank the Lord for AI. It has come and it has helped me so much when it comes to what I feel like how I feel like increase or improving my level of success in a lot of different aspects. So I would say, we love ChatGPT. That is definitely a tool I use every single day. Other things I use is Notion. How you say like you have your
Oh,
list.
yeah.
Notion, Notion is that girl. If you have any whether you're a creator, whether you are project management, you could create whatever you want in Notion. And it definitely organizes my life. I use it a lot for content creation, but also it could be used for to-do lists and the calendars. The integration of the calendars is amazing. So just want to add a little tidbit. None of this is sponsored, but we want it to be sponsored one day. So
Fingers crossed.
yes.
No, and I think you make a really great point because it kind of segues into working smarter, not harder. Like just
My
because
favorite.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, like utilize the tools and the things that are around you. And, we've made certain advancements, whether that be in technology, medicine, whatever, for a reason, like build off of that. And I think like a lot of times we conflate being consistent and like showing up every day and going hard as like that hustle culture as success. And it's like you could be hustling hard and never see any
Not going
results from that.
anywhere. Spinning
Yeah, you could
wheels.
what is it? There's a quote. Oh my gosh, I think it was like by Denzel and it was like um essentially to the essence of like you could run fast standing still. Like, you could
Right.
run fast and not go anywhere.
I
Um
was like, we talked about that a lot because I'm like, I'm definitely growth mindset. And then also, like, just with the stuff, I'm like, okay, let's just do it. And if it doesn't work, we'll pivot. I'm very much into fail fast.
yeah.
That is a technique, that
Ooh,
is a mindset.
quickly.
I would say a leader had told us that. And ever since
Mhm.
then, I was like, yes, that is what I do. And honestly, there are different people, different strokes for different people. So I like to use fail fast. That is one of the techniques. And it's just really meaning that like you try something, it doesn't work out. It's really trial and error. But
Yeah.
like trial and error to where you're not like hyper focusing. It's a hyper focus, y'all, that sometimes really takes people out.
Mm,
So
is this a read?
it's not. That's what I'm like, I'm not throwing
No, you're okay.
so, but no, because it's just like you want to be like things work out, and like especially being in
Yeah.
healthcare, if somebody isn't dying, to me,
No, that's so real.
it's like it's okay, like
'Cause
it's fine.
we have seen something and not as bad as like, it's not always as morbid, but sometimes it is. It's like, you go into work in healthcare and you deal with really heavy things. Like people talk about Grey's Anatomy and like granted it's not as dramatized as that, but that really is kind of how it is some days
Right.
working in healthcare of like you especially I think for people who are in healthcare, and not to say that this is not so in other industries, but you are really connected by purpose to be a clinician or to be a health administrator.
Especially a nonprofit.
Yeah, especially, so it's like that wears on you. And so, it's about figuring out like how do you still balance all of those different elements while not burning yourself out. And that comes from working smarter and not harder.
Yeah, I think I took that from nursing as well. Like just on the extreme circumstances that would happen, it's just
Yeah.
like, hey, in life, it's like there's so many. Just because I've seen so many things, like there's so many, I guess, like worse scenarios
Yeah, yeah.
that could happen to where it's like, okay, this is gonna be okay. Like you can
Yeah.
figure it out. Like we have the tools to figure it out. It's fine.
I definitely have had to learn that through just like matriculating through my career and having different experiences of like literally entering my career in the midst of COVID, where
Right.
like it was so uncertain, no one knew what was going on, and being thrust into environments that I truly was not prepped for. Like I literally started a job, my first like big girl job, and I was in a leadership position, and I'm like, I've never managed. I don't know. Like we're building up like, different pop-up healthcare clinics in the middle of like fields and jails and nursing homes, and we're finding a way through all of that. But I don't know, I just think it teaches you to like calm down, to your point of like, okay, everything is not always on fire, or like to your point, like it could be worse. Like I've dealt through worse, I've made it through worse, I've been resilient in past settings, and so you draw that experience to keep going. um but yeah, I think this is a nice end.
Yes, it's been a good topic talking about success. Do we have any parting thoughts? Any parting words? I feel like mine is really the, fail fast, like making sure that you are developing those consistent habits. We talked about that.
Yeah.
And then also utilizing all the tools that are coming out, y'all. Not maybe not every single one. Some of them do be, a little scammy, but definitely don't be afraid. I'm a big person with technology. I love it. Don't be afraid of all the new things that are coming because they could definitely help, your everyday career, your everyday life. So we could talk about that in a different episode, how to actually utilize that. But just keep learning. That's my parting thought.
No, I love that, because we wouldn't be able to progress without innovation. So I definitely think maybe that's a sticky note for a future episode of breaking that down a little bit. I think for me, I think a big part of anything like that is like a scientific formula or, mathematical equation is being able to not only take the time to solve the equation, but looking back at your work. Like that's a principle that I feel like we all learned in like grade school that
Oh
could
yeah,
carry
review your
over.
work.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
like review your work and
Before
understand
submitting it in.
yes, and like understand the process and understand like where was there opportunity to be more efficient and to be better? Like where could you not, where did you fail and like what did you learn from that? Because I think a lot of times there's a lot of negative connotation around the word failure. But really it's just a lesson. Like a L is not always like a L. It's sometimes it's just you're learning.
Right.
And so I think in that like taking the intentional time to not only like put in the work, solve the equation, but taking the time to look back on what you've learned so that you can apply that in different areas and facets and experiences as you move forward is really, really important. Because you don't want to waste your time. Like I think life is precious. And I think maybe that like going back to the like mid of the episode, that is why I chose the tools that I chose of like a to-do list every day, a calendar, a 90, 60, 30-day assessment, because time is of the essence. And sometimes like you don't, not even sometimes you don't get time back. Like that's the one like
that's the
form of
greatest currency.
Yeah,
Yes,
that you just don't get to like exchange and make deposits. And we all have an expiration date and nobody knows what that is. Like if there's one thing that we all have in common is that we all have an expiration date. And I hate to like be that morbid, but going back to us being in healthcare, you get a little desensitized, but
a lot.
Just, but essentially it's just like knowing that you can always be improving and always be doing things better, more effectively, more efficiency, but you will not know that unless you take a true reflective look on the journey and make a plan about what you want to change going forward. So
I love that. Always be assessing yourself.
Yeah, continue
being
learning.
aware.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's really the takeaway is continue to continually learn and be a sponge and find new ways to become a better version of the same old you.
I love that. That's great parting
Yeah,
words.
so
Yes. Well, thank y'all so much for listening and like, comment, and subscribe. You're listening to another episode of Staying on Business Podcast.
thank you guys for listening, and we will see you guys in about 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye.